A slide reads, Making Time Meaningful, Using Calendar Systems to Build Understanding for Deafblind Students with Nancy Steele. Below the words are the logos for the Wisconsin Deafblind Technical Assistance Project, the National Intervener and Advocate Association, and Wisconsin RID.
This is making time meaningful using calendar systems to build understanding for deafblind students with our very own Nancy Steele. So, Nancy, I am handing it over to you and going off camera.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. I'm going to talk about calendar systems, a subject that I really, really like. So, and I haven't talked about it like in detail for a long time. So it was kind of fun to go back and do a deep dive again. And what I did was go to my friend Robbie Blahaw's book, Calendars, because she wrote the book on calendars. And as a teaser, there might be more about calendar books if you come in August. I don't know that that might be the case, but you can never tell. So anyway, that's where, why reinvent the wheel when you had Miss Robbie Blaha who wrote the book? But I'm also going to talk about my experience with them because I found them to be life-changing when I started working with my deafblind students. And I don't know why my screen is not. Give me just a second to share again and see if I can't get this to move where it needs to. So sorry about that, guys. I love technology when it works, don't you? All right, let's go from the current slide. And now we'll go there. And why calendars? Calendars really help all of us, don't they? I mean, I thrive on my calendar. I'm sure every one of us use our calendars all the time because it helps us to have some kind of frame of reference, some way to think about how my life and my day is going to go because I look at my calendar. And that really helps me. It really gives me that sense of just calm. It helps me, or even if I'm going someplace like the dentist that I don't want to go to, I can mentally and emotionally and spiritually kind of prepare myself for that, right? So it really, I think calendars um, make all the difference in the world as far as our students are concerned. And like I said, when I was teaching my first true deafblind student and learning about all this many, many years ago, I found that it really helped because I knew about routines and we were working on routines and systematic instruction and stuff. And I found that those calendars were those bookends for me because it really did help to start those routines and finish them. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Right now, I just want to talk about the overview of calendars, and they're just individualized timepieces that help our students just to make sense and participate in their environment. So they really get a sense of, okay, there is a method to these people's madness, and until then, things just kind of happened to kids a lot, I think. And so when we can give them that structure, that balance, that way to think about and organize and realize, okay, this is what we're doing and this is how it's going to happen, then that makes it happen. That's the best way to help them because then it helps them to develop concepts. It really helps organize those concepts and build those concepts. And a lot of times our students with deaf blindness have big holes in concept development. They really don't understand the whole because they haven't seen it or maybe experienced. And that's how we learn concepts is through that. It's also a great way to use a calendar is a great way to have just conversations and let them know what's going to happen or what has happened, different ways of showing them here's what we're going to do in this day. These are the different parts that we're going to go through. Also, it gives just a sense of safety. You know, a lot of our kids have things that they really like to do, and sometimes, if they know that it's in that calendar and sometime during this day, we have to maybe go through all these other things, but at some point, I am going to get to do that. Or, these things are going to just help me because, once again, that routine and getting in that structure, there is that sense of safety, there is that sense of control. I'm going to go back to when we were in COVID and think about how that busted all of our routines and our structure in our lives, thinking about putting this structure in lives for our kids with deaf blindness, that makes all the difference in the world. It really does give that sense of safety. It's also a way just to have their opinion heard. Maybe, it's something that they want to do, that they're going to get that object or whatever, that representation, and let you know, no, this is what I want to talk about, or this is what I want to do, and gives them that. Also, it just gives them the understanding and passage of time and how that really flows into everything. And sorry, for whatever reason, I can't make it go into slideshow. So we just have my PowerPoint in its raw form, but oh well. Okay, so in order to get into calendars, we want to talk about it just is helpful in developing communicative forms. And communicative forms, or it helps if we have those. And communicative forms are the ways that we're going to communicate or how we communicate. And, if we think about typical communicators, we possess an array of recognizable forms. We have speech, we have gestures, we have written word, we have signs, we have pointing, we have all different ways to know our different forms that we can use to communicate. We also use both static, which are the things, the tangible things, the things we can touch or whatever. And then we have dynamic things. So static would be actual objects or maybe a line drawing or like a braille or print or something that we can touch. It's something that stays there and we can go back and look at it. We can refer to it, that kind of stuff. But then if we talk about dynamic forms, then that's really those things that they come and go, like signing. Signing comes, but then it's gone. Speech comes, but then it's gone. Even finger spelling, anything like that, it just kind of comes and goes and then it's gone. So it's no way to really capture it. So, when we think about our deaf-blind kids, they don't have all those forms necessarily. Most of them have not developed a lot of forms, a lot of ways to communicate. Um, and so that makes it a lot harder. And it's also, there's a lot of need to just build concepts. We learn concepts by watching, by experience, all of those things. And that helps us just to form concepts and make them grow. But with our deafblind learners, they don't necessarily, they have to be taught concepts. And we as teachers really are good at teaching skill. We're not so great at teaching concepts because we don't think about it. We just kind of feel like, oh yeah, it's going to be formed that way. And nobody really taught us that way. So it's kind of foreign for us to think about really purposefully thinking about the concepts that are missing. And let me tell you, folks, a lot of them are vast. There's so many concepts that our deafblind learners just have no clue. So it's hard. But once you get in there and start thinking it through, it's really kind of fun. Okay, so it also requires like modifications and techniques that really are not your typical way. So it really is a stretch for you and I, and for them, of course, you know. Um, they need they need time, more time to process things, and just wait time. So because sometimes they don't get it, and where we are in the real world, we're hammering it out, aren't we? We're just trying to pull that information and throw it in as hard as we can as teachers and as interveners, and we're just, and parents, we're just all trying to just grab it in there. But sometimes it takes that slowing it down and getting that roll. So this is a way to really frame it in there. And those materials, that are presented, it just depends on what those materials are as to how much the distance is so that they can be seen or anything like that. They also have to use things like coactive signing sometimes. There are all kinds of different forms and stuff that we have to think about as we're doing things with deafblind kids. So, some of the things that we need to do, or the support that support it, is just to support the transition from concrete to abstract forms. So, a lot of times when we're teaching these kids, we use like concrete things, like an actual cup or a fork or something like that that represents what we're about to do. It's very concrete. You know exactly what it is. A lot of times we start out with the actual object. So if it's a particular cup that they use, we're going to use the same kind of cup or that actual cup to demonstrate that form. And we want to move it into more abstract forms so that eventually we'd love to get to where we just have a piece of that, or maybe we can get them down to print or braille, or maybe some kind of representation that's more abstract. It also ties symbols to activities so that if we think about tying those symbols, that represents, if I have that cup, it's going to represent that we're going to get something to drink, or I have that fork, we're going to the lunchroom, or whatever it is. Using that symbol or object will also help in recalling prior experiences. So, by using this every day and very systematically in a way that lets them know this is what we're about to happen, this is where we're going, this is what we will be doing, that helps them to, oh yeah, we've done this before. And soon they get to understand and getting to that place where they're anticipating the next step, especially if we're very systematic in how we pull that routine out and how we make sure that they understand every step of that routine. Calendars can also individualize that activity so that students can have those correct combinations of symbols, both for receptive reasons. So if they're receiving the information, oh, this is what we're going to do, or expressively by using those same symbols and giving it to you or showing and demonstrating this is what I want, or this is the answer to that question, or whatever it is. And you can also combine abstract and concrete forms during conversations. So it may be just like all of us. Sometimes I need to get my actual key fob out to remind me, oh, yeah, that's where I'm going. I'm going to the car, right? Or I may do more abstract things where I may just write out a list of things. It can also be individualized to accommodate sensory needs. So, if there are things that are very tactually defensive or whatever, we can also individualize those forms that really help the kids. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about function, about why we would want to communicate, why anybody would want to. And I always have to start with how do typically developing people do this? How do typical communicators, why would they want to communicate? And routinely, they want to initiate conversations or maybe participate in an interaction or something for specific reasons. And that may be that they want to request information, or maybe they want to reject something or a person or whatever. Or they may want to respond to a question or maybe describe or share information about something. They also may understand that others may want to communicate to them for a variety of reasons. So somebody might want to communicate to give me directions on how to do something. They may want to comment on something that I'm doing or something that I've talked about. They may want to provide feedback or to report on maybe something that happened in the past or just to have some playful interactions, right? So that's why somebody might want to communicate. For our kids with deaf blindness, a lot of times they aren't aware that they have the power in communication, that there is that power of getting what I want through that and have some power over their environment and some say so in this. Um, so a lot of times it really comes out as those inappropriate behaviors. And in fact, a lot of times that's what I've been called in for so many times when I go into classrooms is they're having behavior. So, that to me tells me, okay, we're going to talk about communication because a lot of times they don't have the way, the form to do it. They have a reason, but they just can't get it out and in a way that folks can understand. And they may not use communication for purposes other than just basic requesting, like I want that food or I don't want that, and shoving things off the table. So when we use, you know, a calendar system to support this, it really is to reinforce the power of communication by associating that symbol with an activity so that they actually know, okay, when I show you this, when you have this and you're feeling it or you're touching it or you're seeing it or whatever it is you're doing with it, that means we're going to go do such and such. And it's support for better strategies for rejecting activities that they don't want. So instead of just going in and leveling out, just raking everything off the table, wow, wouldn't it be better if I can give you something that says no, or to understand and learn how to do that in a much more appropriate way. And that calendar dialogue and routine can help build those opportunities so that they get to practice on how to reject, how to request, how to ask questions, or how to comment on things. So it really does give them that safe framework that really does make all the difference in the world. Now we're going to talk a little bit about topic development. And when we think about topics, we as typical communicators, we have a variety of topics and a variety of interest. And we know things because we've seen them, we've experienced them, we've heard about them. There's so many different things that are going on. And that's usually what happens. But a lot of times with our deaf-blind students, they may not have enough adequate information about topics to be able to say things about them or experience them. The sensory loss just really can reduce or distort their information about the environment. So their experience is based significantly on lack of organization of information. So they really sometimes don't know what's going on. And they have very few topics to talk about. A lot of times we act on these kids and we are doing things to them and we don't give them a lot of time to really talk about things and give them topics to talk about. It's usually what's happening in the classroom to them at that moment, and that's the topic. So we don't give them that, a lot more other opportunities. They may have trouble talking about things before or after they happen. A lot of times things happen kind of in a vacuum to our kids, and they don't have a way to say, that thing that happened this morning, I really liked it. It was a lot of fun, but I don't know the name of it. I don't know how to ask for it. I don't even know where it came from. So a lot of times, you know, that may be too, I think, a lot of times where we get some of those behaviors because those things have happened and they really enjoyed it. They'd like to talk about it more or do it more, experience it, but they don't have a way of asking for it. And so they burst out because they're mad. It's like I really want to do that, but I don't know how to get it. May have difficulty also just in establishing or following a topic. If we're talking at circle time, and that's a fast moving time in a classroom, and so a lot of people are talking in a lot of different ways, and it's hard to keep up with it. And sometimes our kids just really have trouble, like they might finally establish, oh, okay, this person's talking, but by the time they establish that, then they've lost what they're talking about because it bounces to somebody else. So we have to kind of slow that roll down sometimes for our kids and make it very purposeful. They may not detect a change of a new topic either. So sometimes it just is because they haven't had those cues to let them know we've moved off of that topic. It's on to something else now. They may insist that we talk about something over and over and over again. I know several kids like that, and a lot of it is that's just their way. They know they want to socialize, they want to talk to you, they want to engage in some kind of conversation, they want to be part, but they don't have too many topics that they can rely on and pull on to start that conversation, right? So, when we think about topics in calendars, they are usually engaged in what we're doing in that daily routine, in that daily day to day. And so that really helps us to provide those topics to them and help them to figure out, oh, this is what we're doing now, and this is what we're doing. And, I like calendars too, because what we tend to do is mesh a lot of routines together. Like we tend to call things our morning routines or things like that. And that can be a list of 15 different routines. For our kids using a calendar system, we can parcel those off so that we can show that there's a break between brushing your teeth, washing your face, getting dressed, doing all of those things. Each one of those are separate topics. So we can make sure that they understand that those are each separate topics, they're separate routines, and that they have names to them. There's a method to that madness. And it also helps that expansion of those topics too when we use our calendars. Um, Introducing new topics is easier also, especially if we've really, really done our work in establishing very good routines and a really good routine or calendar routine where they know, wow, this is what we're going to do, that we're introducing it here. We're going to go off and do something somewhere else. We'll come back to our calendar when we're finished. Then we'll get the next thing and go and do. So they're really understanding. And if they then when we do new topics, it's much easier for them to, kind of grasp, okay, I know that they're going to lead me. I can trust that this is going to happen. I can trust that there are going to be steps that we take. And then when we finish, we'll always come back here. So, and also just to introduce topics out of context is also a really good use of calendars because then we're able to tell them, okay, we're going to do this later this afternoon or in the lunchroom, whatever we're going to do. If a student is fixated on a topic, you can schedule time to talk about that in the calendar and then move to other topics. So if they do have that where they just want to talk about this, I only want to talk about goldfish. That's all I want to talk about. And we can kind of say, nope, look, see, let's check our calendar. Nope, this is what we're talking about right now. See, we're going to talk about calendar or goldfish 2 steps from now, 2 other routines. We got to do this, and then we can talk about it. So you can also help move them through their day and help to get them to where they feel like they have a little sense of, okay, so I can reason with you and I know I will get what I want if I do what you want from me. So that puts it squarely with us helping them.
Nancy,
Okay.
this is Heidi. We have a question.
Okay.
I use tactiles. Is it better to go through the full day with them or class by class?
I think it depends on the student very much. I liked, with my particular student, I went through the calendar all day. We're talking about a daily calendar here. There are different types of calendars, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But it truly does depend on the student. And I would take my student through the day and then we would go back and we go through our day. And at the end of the day, then we take our finished basket and we would go through and talk about it again. And we even took it a step ahead more. Because when I was teaching in Kentucky, we had to show that our students could write. So we took our calendar system and we would mass produce our symbols. And at the end of the day, we would talk about it, and she would pick out 3 of the things that we had done that day, and we put it into a journal and then sent that home so that they could talk about it again at home. So that there were at least 4 times during the day that we were going back to that calendar and really using it to help her organize and see the structure in her day and what she had done and just giving her that exposure to that vocabulary and that there was a method to our madness and such. I hope that helped. That is not where we're going to start though. That was full blown after several years of very intensive work on establishing those routines and those calendars and that kind of stuff. It started with anticipation, which is what we're going to talk about tonight in just a few minutes. Right now, I'm just talking calendars in general. Does that help? I hope I answered that. Okay, so I'm going to move on. And we're going to talk about just social conversations and why that is such a valuable piece. If we think about, once again, our typical of communicators, we're motivated to interact with others. I mean, we thrive on it. A lot of us, most of us, I can't say all of us, because some of us are, not as outgoing as maybe I am, but, um, people are very motivated to interact with others because they understand the power of communication and gaining the things that they need or they want, you know. They also know how to locate a partner and to gain their attention. And see, that's something that our kids, they struggle with sometimes. They also learn most of the time, most people learn how to take turns in a conversation. So, that's a skill. That's something that we develop over time. Most of us, some never do. And then noticing when a communication partner is not understanding, or maybe I need to change strategies, or I see that maybe you need some clarification. You don't understand because I see it on your face or whatever. With our deaf blind students, they can be extremely withdrawn socially. It depends on their vision, their hearing. They may not know that people are around them so that they have folks that they could communicate with. Um, they may not see or hear others interacting because of their sensory losses. So that's a big part of not being able, being socially isolated. And then having difficulty in distinguishing one person from another based on just if they haven't been able to see them, or they're only seeing partial things, the information that they are receiving, maybe it's distorted depending on their hearing. All of those things have huge implications. They may also have difficulty in searching or locating just where is this communication partner. And, they may be on that struggle bus with that. And by the time they do that, the interaction is over, or the other person may not know how to pick up the ball and move it further. Um, they may not understand or be motivated to take turns in interactions. They haven't been taught that that's how you do it. It's usually very one-sided a lot of times. So it's really hard to get that in there. And then requires just that really structured routine with supports in order to communicate sometimes, where we really let them know this is how that's done. This is how we have that conversation. Um, when we use calendar systems to help with that social conversation development, it just really helps with that anticipation skills. And folks, that's a really sought after skill. When you can get kids to the place where they anticipate what's going to happen next, then that's game on. That's where we want them to be. Um, it makes the instructor available as a partner for an adequate amount of time. If we have that time to really have those conversations with these kids. So many times when whoever it is that's with them, if they have several other duties or whatever, then that throws them off and they're not able to give that full on attention that our deaf-blind students so desperately need. Um, it also provides immediate feedback in their efforts to communicate if they're using, a calendar system. Conversations can be individually designed to provide that structure and support. It also just provides multiple opportunities throughout the day to have those conversations, much like what I was talking about a little earlier about how we use a calendar system. Okay, so now when we talk about this, whoops. Now, let's talk about time. Time-related concepts are just very, very needed, uh, you know, to talk about past, present, future, waiting, what's going to happen next. Words that represent those concepts, they help us to make sense of our world. If I know something that happened yesterday, but I'm not able to say it, articulate it, let somebody know, oh, I've done that before. Oh, I want to do that again. That time, it really is essential. It's how we thrive in life, you know. Our memories of the past. When we like to talk about what we did, you know, what we did on vacation, what we're going to do next year, what are our plans for today, our hopes for the future. All of those things are essential on helping us to organize our thoughts and to give us some frame of reference of how it's going to happen. So time concepts in the calendar formats are those timepieces. They're the things that are kind of helping us to bridge that gap, to let them know, okay, we're going to do this activity, this routine, whatever you want to call it. But there is this sandwich in there, this bookend, where we're going to start with that calendar. This is what we're going to do. We go off and we do that thing, and then we come back and we have that finish box that we place that tangible symbol in, and that lets us know it is finished, so that helps us to understand and identify. It helps us also to introduce those early aspects of past, present, and future. And it can move from more concrete formats to more abstract as we move through, and as they become familiar and it becomes more rote. See, I think that that's part of the problem with our kids, is that we don't teach them in a way that it makes it rote for them, so that they understand all the parts of the routine, so that then we can start fading out and they can start doing that on their own, with relying on going back and checking that calendar to see what's next, what's next. You know, that's what I found most powerful when I was working with my student and developing all this and learning about calendars and such, is we really spent a lot of time very systematically developing those routines and using that calendar, and we were very structured. I task analyzed every single routine. We knew every step by step, and we took data on what are the things she knew, what were the things that she needed that support in, what were the things where we needed to come in and do. um, but after doing that so systematically for so long, after we'd been in school around 100 days, I finally said to the intervener, let's back off and see what she does. And as we came into the school building, her routine was to come in with the intervener. They would go into the office and check in. They'd come around and find my room, my classroom. She trailed the wall and found my classroom with the help of the intervener. Then she'd come over and find our calendar, and she would go to the first thing. That's where we would start talking about everything. So after doing this so systematically for every single day religiously, we kind of backed off and watched, and we were right there within 2 feet of her. But she walks in, she locates the office, she does what she's supposed to do in that. She locates the wall, goes all the way around, goes straight to the calendar, finds the first thing. And it was always like a today is whatever yesterday was. It's kind of our circle time calendar thing. She went straight, stuck it straight on the board, and started doing it. And it was like, oh my gosh, so powerful, because she understood every step of that routine, and that there were parcels to it, that what was happening in that section, and then the next section, and the next section. So it really is just beautiful when you really do very systematically use them, to help you, to just help them to make sense of the world. Language and understanding of time concepts can be taught through the use of calendars. And then materials are carefully designed routines, um, can really help make the difference if you do it in a tangible way that shows that passage of time. You can do it. It's just a matter of framing it out. You know what? They also provide that emotional support. It really helps in assisting that trusting relationship. And guys, our kids, trust is a big thing. And we assume that we have trust with our kids, but we don't necessarily. But this really does help because it helps them to know, okay, I know that you're going to be there. I know that you're going to have me do these things. I know what it is that's expected of me. That security of knowing what's about to happen. Once again, go back to your own calendars. And, when you have those things, even those things you don't want to do, it kind of can help you mentally and emotionally be supported because okay, I know I have to go to the dentist, but we're going to make this happen. I'm going to do it. I'll be all right, but if I look further in my calendar, I get to go out with my friends this evening. So I can make it through the dentist this morning because I'm going to have something fun this evening. So that's the things that are emotionally supportive to us. Why wouldn't they be for our students? That consistency of going through the developed calendar routine can help when things change too. So when things, sometimes we all have disruptions and things that happen in a day. Um, if there is a change, we can always, it can be explained beforehand or at least, shown through the calendar. Oops, we have to move this out and put this in instead, or, oh, that's been canceled. The OT's not coming today, or whatever it is. It can really provide that reassurance that it's okay. We will readjust and make it happen, and you're going to be okay through that change. And that advance notice of things to look forward to. This afternoon we're going to have a party, or next week we're going to do this. It really does give that emotional support that makes all the difference in the world. Because if you do feel emotionally supported, then guess what? You're open and ready to learn much more than if things are just happening to you and you're fighting it off, because then you can't really learn. You're in flight or fight mode, and the emotional piece of you is falling apart because you're just worried about protecting yourself. So therefore it gives them that sense of control and helps them to understand. So some of the tips for success, I'm going to tell you again, we got to establish those routines that we're representing in the calendar. We've got to also just establish a calendar routine. How are we going to go about this? Where is that routine? Where is that calendar going to be? It needs to usually be in the same place, because then there is that sense of, okay, it's the mothership. This is where it is. This is where, if I'm going to do stuff, I'm going here, and this is going to let me know what I'm going to do next. And so it really does, that establishing that routine is vital. And then doing the calendar daily and throughout the day, even if it is an anticipation calendar, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. I'm going to do it all day long, the same way, all day long. And I'm also going to honor what is scheduled in that calendar. We're going to do that. If I do have to change that, I'm going to let that student know that. I'm going to do it at that time. We're going to change one component of the calendar at a time as well. I'm not going to go in and use all real objects and then all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to wipe all that out and we're going to just use partial objects. It's going to happen as the student gets it and understands. I'm going to change those components as I see change in them. I'm not going to change and wipe everything out at once. And I'm not going to stop just because the student knows the schedule. That's not the point of this. We're using the calendar for so many other things other than just their schedule throughout the day. And that's something I see a lot. Oh, well, they know where we're going. They know what we're going to do. We always do it this way. That's not what this is about, folks. They need that calendar for so many other reasons. Hopefully, I've given you a bunch just in the time that I've been talking. Also, video that student's routine so that others know what to do. A lot of times I know I'm talking to some interveners, and I know that you all are durable and you are going to be there no matter what is, but sometimes you get sick or your kids get sick or things happen and you're not able to be there. So you may be the only one who really understands that routine. It's really vital to do that calendar routine, videotape it so that others can do it in case you aren't there, because it really does make a difference for this child to know what's going to happen and how they're using the calendar. So before you begin with a calendar system, you want to determine the modifications the student might need to access the information or access instruction. You really have to think about what are those forms we're going to use? What are the things that we need to have in there? Um, how are we going to operationalize this? We're going to develop that individualized communication program and really think it through. And it doesn't have to all be done in one day. I start small. Really start with one or two really powerful routines that that they know. And then we're going to design a schedule that's organized and with variety of activities and varied activities that can be represented in the calendar. And we're going to select the correct time frame for the student. And with that, I'm going to talk about just the types of calendars. For tonight's purposes, I mean, we could go into all this, but then y'all wouldn't want to come see me in August. So I'm going to just talk about anticipation calendars tonight. But I want to touch bases and just let you know there are different types of calendars. There's an anticipation calendar, and that is what I'm going to spend the most time with. There's also, that's one where you're doing it's the here and now. It's what's going to happen in the present. It's the immediate present and the immediate past, what just happened. So that's what an anticipation calendar is. And I'm going to show you some pictures and show you different things about that in just a second. Daily calendars are where you have set it up. Sometimes you set it up for half a day or full days, but it's more hunks of time that you're doing it instead of just the here and now. So it can be set up, it's usually with different compartments so that you understand that there is a different thing, or there may be different baskets that you use, but there's a structure to it. Then there are expanded calendars. So you can go to weekly calendars, multi-weekly calendars, monthly calendars, and then annual calendars. Weekly calendars might be where you would definitely want to display and show folks that, on Mondays we go to gym, and on Wednesdays we cook, or Fridays we do community-based instruction. So there may be that we want to use that weekly calendar to demonstrate these are things that are different throughout. We're going to have our daily calendar, but we also do those weekly things. Those are the things that happen every week, where we go out and do community-based or whatever. Multi-week, same way, and then monthly, and then annual. But those will come later. So now I want to spend the rest of the time just talking about anticipation calendars. And these are just some examples. These are picture examples of some that are different. This is not necessarily, these aren't necessarily our anticipation calendars. These are all kinds of different kinds of calendars. So I'll talk about this slide first, and then we'll get into those anticipation. Sorry about that. So the very first picture, this picture with the blue, you notice the little blue baskets. There are four of them, and then there's a red basket at the end. And if you think about it, it's got four different um, symbols involved in it. These have pictures. There are also other things that are used. I think there are some uh, like a rug maybe that's showing circle time or different things like that. So there are different formats that are used, but they're all put on a piece of hard stock and mounted on there. And if you notice, they've written words on there because, and that's for other folks who are looking at their schedule, looking at their calendar, and determining what those things are. It's really important that you do mount it and you put the word on there so that others will know. But for our students, if you notice that it's also set up where it's left to right, which is pre-literacy skills, right? We learn how to read from left to right also. So therefore we go and see the first thing and get it and go do it, and then we put the object into the red finish box at the end. Underneath there are shelves underneath that also have other of their um, symbols that they use, and even other pictures and such that are down below, so that they're easily accessible to both the adult who's helping, but also to the deaf blind student. One of the most powerful times with my student, I could not get her to initiate. It would make me crazy, but she would not initiate. And one day we had our fanny pack, which was what we used for community based, going out into community based. And she found it and she brought it over to me, and it wasn't community based day at all. It was a Tuesday, and we usually went out on Fridays. But because she initiated, I called the office and said, "We'll be right back." We went out to my car, we drove to my house, got the mail out of my mailbox, and came back to school just because she had initiated, and it was so powerful. The next day she wanted to do it again, but I was able to say, "No, no, that's not today. That's on Friday." And that's when I knew, okay, maybe we need to start having those weekly calendars. Maybe I need to build her calendar system out a little more because she's starting to identify and see these activities that we do.
Hey,
Uh,
Nancy, there
yes.
is a question. Which type of calendar is best for home use?
Um, I would say that depends again on the student or the kid. It also depends on your space at home, what you're doing, how you're gonna, it depends on so many factors. But just using it is vital. I think that's wonderful. Um, I would say make it convenient to you and make it convenient to them. Let them know where those symbols are. A lot of times they're in their bedroom, or maybe it's in a hallway or whatever. Maybe you'll have some certain symbols in the bathroom because there's so many of our activities and routines go in there. So maybe there's a place, a shelf or something that can be built that you only have those things in there. I think, at home it's maybe a little bit different because it's not as structured, but I do absolutely feel like it's vital, and it's great when you do use a calendar system in the home because it once again lets them know we're about to go to the doctor, or we're going to eat supper, or we're going to take a bath, all of those different things, so that they are understanding that those routines as well. Does that help? I hope so. Okay, so going to the right, top right, here's just some more different symbols that are used to demonstrate different um, activities that might be happening. This is just one person's example. These can be very much individualized to the student's comprehension, to what's going on, what's available. My suggestion though to you, if you're thinking about those symbols and such, is to make it something that's durable and something that you can reproduce a lot of them, and they need to be sturdy, or you need to be able to mass produce. With my student, we mass produced these symbols because we did want to use it in that journal. Okay, so then down at the bottom, the one that's in the pink, this one has Velcro, or not Velcro, but it has the black felt in the back, but it's got the different sections. You see how it's still sectioned off because that lets them know these are separate items. These are separate things. And this one is kind of put into a morning and afternoon kind of deal. So today's Friday. We're going to look at our schedule. First, we're doing classwork, we're doing plant work. I don't know what that next thing is. So they've got all of the different things. It's very structured, but it's parceled out so that they understand and see that there are different parcels throughout the day. The last picture over here is in a preschool. It's a piece of board that has the felt on it with 3 structured pieces. It's using more actual objects. One of them is we're going to change your diaper. Then the next one is going to circle time or playtime. And then the other is, I don't know what those are, but it's used in the same exact way, left to right. There's the finish box. Down below are other items that can be used and accessed. Okay, so there are just accessible calendar systems, just examples of a few different things. We'll get into much more of that in August, hopefully. Okay, so now we're going to talk about using anticipation calendars. And in anticipation calendar, you only have 2 items. One is what you're going to do, the basket, or in this case, it can be a basket this is what we're doing now. And then it has a totally different basket. In this case, it's a 9 by 13 pan that they've used as a finish box. And you can see that some of those items are in the finish box already. I would, with anticipation, only do one in the introduction basket, and the other I would only have the finished thing that we just finished in the finished pan in this one. Okay, so you only using those 2 things. See where the other ones where we had those sectioned out, we're only doing one. Anticipation is only the here and now. Okay. So when we talk about anticipation, this is our entry level timepiece. You'll know when they're ready for anticipation calendars, when they recognize some of the people, the locations, sounds, scents, actions of 2 or 3 routines. When they start understanding that there's a little bit of a method to our madness, then that's when you really want to get in there and start that anticipation calendar. It acts appropriately when they act appropriately with 1 or 2 objects that are part of a familiar routine. Then that's another time that I would really want to make sure that I'm starting to use those anticipation calendars. It's time. Also, if they engage in brief interactions with others, that means that they've seen you as a communication partner. Sometimes if they haven't recognized you or others, anybody as a communication partner, then we need to spend some time, not so much with objects as much as we need to have that time this way with them, where they're really understanding that interaction between the 2 of us. Then I want to move into this. as they start to understand and recognize that. When they distinguish between people, between a few caregivers or people, or family members, whatever, when they're distinguishing between different people, then I'll also want to use that anticipation calendar. Also, if they can anticipate a few steps ahead of a familiar routine. So let's say a bathing routine, if they're in the bathtub and they recognize that we're doing different parts, then that might be where I really want to start introducing that anticipation. And then understanding when a routine is finished. That's also just when they understand that, okay, we're done with that, it's no more. That's when I want to do it. Um, when we use it, when we let's see, I think I talked about this one for the most part. This is for the present. This when we use anticipation calendars, we really are using them for the here and now. This is what we're going to do right this minute. That concept of time is only relates to right now, what we're going to do. We're not talking about future things or past. It's going to teach us that immediate future and that immediate past. That's what it's doing. And that's really, really important that we get those pieces down before we move into a broader calendar system, because they really need to understand those. This is just the most basic type of daily calendar. We can use those two pieces, like the little mesh basket, wire basket that they have the object in, and then the yellow plastic is the finish box in this picture. We would definitely be using that. You could use those same two baskets all day long to anticipate. And you do use those in an anticipation calendar. That's how you would use it. Okay. Anticipation calendars really, they help support comprehension. They help anticipate what will happen next. And it helps to put a label on those present events. So this is what we're going to do. Um, I think I just talked about most of those prerequisites, so I don't need to go over them again. Just that's vital that we do those. These are some examples of the anticipation calendar. The top picture has just the one box and it says eat time, and it's got the spoon in it, and then the finish box basket. And the one in the um, picture below has two activities. So circle time and then eat time. And I would not introduce that until I knew that they really understood one at a time before I started doing one and then the next, adding two of those separate boxes in an anticipation calendar. That's when I know that we're about to move into a daily. Okay, so some of the characteristics, it really is that specific time frame. It's really looking at that immediate past and that immediate future, and those two containers that are distinctly different from the individual's perspective. And sometimes, if we're looking at that, we've got to sometimes just shut our eyes and think about it from what they're experiencing. That's how I choose when I am looking for those symbols that I'm going to use. If I'm using tangible symbols, I'm really thinking about and shutting my eyes, really looking at it from the student's perspective. What is it that they are experiencing? And that's what I'm going to use. So I'm really going to use those and make them very distinctly different, and thinking about that. That system is that entry level calendar system. This is just the start of building their future and building their vocabulary, building their concepts, all of their concepts. If the individual isn't ready for this, then that emphasis should really be on developing those routines and participation in those routines and really teaching them. And there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. You can start by doing part of the routine and then waiting and seeing if they're going to, like, even sometimes just, moving their body like they want to move forward or they're reaching out for things. Those are the ways that I'm going to test it and make sure that they're understanding that routine and that they know what's going to happen next. When I'm using an anticipation calendar, I'm going to present the symbol. I'm going to label it or say what it is, and I'm going to go to that activity just immediately. We're not going to mess around. When I show it to them, we're either going to be right there where we're going to do that activity, or we're going to go straight to where that is going to happen and start it immediately. When it's finished, we're going to put that symbol for the activity in the finish box. And I'm going to say something about finish now. This kind of bleeds into routines, but I think it's vital. I particularly say finish 3 times for kids. And I think that part of the reason that we do get behaviors that we get is because we don't finish things off appropriately, and it starts with that. Hold on just a second. Sorry. I'm moving fast here. Okay. So when I think about doing finish 3 times, the first time is as we're doing that routine and we're almost finished. We're cleaning it up. We've got one more puzzle piece to put in or one more whatever it is that we're doing. I'm going to say almost finished. I'm going to give them that cue and let them know we're almost finished, because then they can start just separating, emotionally separating from what we're doing, right? Then I'm going to say finished again when we have completed. When we have completed, then we're going to take all those items that we've been working with and we're going to put them back where we found them. And so that's the other piece of finished, is that's finished too, when we're finishing that piece. The final finished is when we put it in that finish box. And that lets them know it's sealed, we're done. And that also, well, I'm going to give them wait time at that point. I'm going to give them time to process and think about it, especially when I'm starting these anticipation calendars. I really want them to have that time to go, what just happened? Wait a minute. There's a method. First, she did this, and then we did this, and then we did, huh, this is really cool. That's how we do things. And helping them to organize that in their brains, because then that's how we help them to get those concepts developed. That's how we help them to understand what's going on and that there is a method to this world, and how we do things and how things are structured. That really gives that power to them. We want to allow them time to process. They've got to. You'll know when they're finished, because they'll either move, they'll go on to the next thing. And we do, we may give them more time in the upfront, but then as they get used to using these calendars, then they're not going to need as much processing time in between, because they're starting to understand the day and what's going on. Okay. So I'm going to finish up with this. Hold on. Let me see if I can. All right. Control and click. Okay. So now I'm going, and hopefully you all can see a video. There isn't sound to this, I don't think, or if it is, very few words. There's not much. So I just want you to watch as she's going through. Now she's using more routine in here. She's going to be doing several things, but I want you watching how she uses the form. She uses different symbols, but then how she's using it in the front to use anticipation. So and the baskets that she's using and how she goes through it. So let's,
Nancy, I don't know that the video loaded. It's just a gray screen.
oh, then I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Did I stop?
Yep.
All right, let me find y'all again. And now I'm going to share again. And hopefully this would. Now, do you see it?
It just said, yes, part of
Now,
it. You still have that gray strip across the top, but that's better.
okay, and that's that thing, that stop share thing, that Zoom thing. All right, so I'm going to start it over. You should see this little cutie pie. All right, you notice the basket that she's got it in, and she's got a pitcher of water. Okay, they're finished pouring the water. And so they put it into the finish box. All right. Now they're going to use the calendar again.
Clap, clap, clap.
And this is lotion.
Get it, Bob. How about?
See how she's part of the routine. She's learning how to rub the lotion in. She's engaged in the activity with the intervener. Now they're going to use the finished box again. Oh, And now they're going to put the shoes and socks back on. Okay. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And if you notice, they used different parts. There's still, it was all pretty much, they were using the spa, they were doing the water, and then they did the lotion. They did, so that could be a big, huge, one big routine, a day at the spa, but they broke it up into different parts of that routine of what they were doing so that they're looking at. There was the part where they poured the water in and splashed in the water and soaked the feet, and then there was a piece that y'all didn't necessarily see, but where they dried the feet, and there was a towel in the calendar system. You just couldn't see it. And then the next was the lotion, and then they put the shoes and socks on. So each one of those were different pieces. We could call that one big spa afternoon, but they've broken it into those pieces of what happens during this time, what happens during that time. Does that make sense? Okay, so now I'm at a place where, do you have questions? Because we've got about 12, 13 minutes left.
Yeah, so feel free if you want to come onto the screen, you can. Nancy, I was reminded though with her having her shoes off, to if there is a routine that could potentially also be being used at home, this is where it's important to talk to families so that you guys can sort of use a consistent routine across sort of that generalization concept. I had a student one time, one of my very first deafblind students, this is a long time ago, and I didn't know this. And so I took his shoes off for an activity and he started crying. And it didn't, back then I wasn't so smart. And so it didn't dawn on me that there was a really a reason for the crying other than I'm like, oh, are the shoes too small? Or like all of these things I'm running through. And at home, it was already a routine that when the shoes came off, it was time for bed. And so
Oh, wow.
so he already had this routine established that in his head, like nobody had an anticipation box, nobody like used it as a calendar system. The parents just took the shoes off before they put the pajamas on or before he got into the tub. And so he connected to shoes coming off to going to bed, and he didn't want to go to bed. Or
Wow.
right. And so if you have a response that sort of seems off, like you might want to have a conversation with the family or other service providers and say, hey, any ideas why I might have gotten this response?
Well, and that's why it's really important that we do establish those routines and talk to each other, because you're right. That is for him was like, I don't want to go to bed. But you would have no way of knowing that unless you do talk to the parent. So please make sure that everybody's kind of using the same language. That's another thing that really happens, and it's not pretty when we're not using the same symbols or the same even signs or vocabulary, whatever it is. The consistency is just key. Okay.
So Brittany has a question. Apart from the spot example with the lotion and water pitcher, can you explain the selection process for picking and using concrete objects to represent a specific activity?
Say it again.
So aside from the examples that were just in the video,
Right.
how do you select objects?
I think that you have to put yourself in their position. And that means you really have to stop and think about, what are they seeing? What are they hearing? Whatever that combination is, and what are they experiencing through this? An example of this, when we used to go on community base, we would go in my car. But going to and from school, the intervener drove my student. And so there were two different vehicles, and we wanted a way to show the difference between the two. And so with her car, I can't remember what we used, but with mine, mine had the electric handle, window openers, and she loved to play with those. So I found a toy and used something different there. So you really want to think about what is it that she is or he is experiencing. What is he going to get out of this? What is it that he will understand and get out of this? That's how you figure out what to use.
I would also, I'm going to add to,
Please
they
do.
need to be easily replaceable. So,
Yes,
and not expensive because they may break, you may lose them, someone uses them, they get flushed down a toilet. Like, so make
there's
sure they're
so many things.
inexpensive and replaceable. And Jolene, you have a nice comment too, that Jolene experienced a calendar system where they had a comb. The student never used a comb. Like that was just an object that we chose. So take your sighted hearing experiences out of it. I remember working with a school district who they wanted to represent vanilla pudding because the student loved vanilla pudding. I mean, they were like, let's buy yellow chiffon because it's silky and it's the color. And I'm like just use the pudding cup. Like that's her experience is the pudding cup. Like you don't need to make it any more complicated than that.
Right. Think about it. Take your eyes. I shut my eyes. I shut my eyes and went through the routine as if I were her. And that's how and I still to this day love to go out and think about doing that. I love to go to Big Lots or
I've been known to.
Goodwill.
I was looking for one time for active learning, and I remember standing in like the Home Depot with different buckets over my head because I wanted to see which one had the best echo or the best reverberation. So it's not uncommon. So there are a couple more comments in here. It says, I think having too much info in the calendar can cause some students confusion, like sensory overload. If a child can understand verbal, uses some very basic sign, and anticipates the routine already, what would be the next level calendar after anticipation calendar? Or should an anticipation calendar be started first with a child that's never had a calendar system?
I would start, number one, I'd start with anticipation because you're learning too. Okay. So if the mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And if you don't know what you're doing, then to try to do this whole big wad of all day, every day stuff is overwhelming. So start small for yourself and learn how to do it. And then from there, you're going to be motivated because as you understand it, you're going to get into it and you're going to start, oh, okay, well, we can use this for this. We can use that pudding cup for to show that. We can use all these different things. You're going to start understanding it and building it, but start small because you need to understand it first.
And Robbie would say, I remember her saying this during one of her presentations, and it just was an aha moment for me. You really don't move on until the student is sort of independently wanting to seek out what's in that anticipation calendar. Like I
Yes.
have somebody that comes to me in the morning and opens my calendar and tells me what I'm doing for the day. So this student needs to want to know. So we oftentimes don't move from the anticipation calendar until they make some sort of an independent direction toward or letting you know they want to see what's in that anticipation calendar. And yes, you can pair calendar system cues with AAC device, ASL, like whatever. So she talked earlier about forms, so there are different forms of communication. So you're going to use the forms that the student is using.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't see anything else in there, and it is 7:26. So if anyone has any last sort of minute, thumbs up. Thank yous. And I think that's it, unless anyone has some last minute wisdom.
I think I'm tapped out.
Yeah, thank you, Keith and Gina, for interpreting for us tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Again, August 3rd and 4th in Madison, Wisconsin. no cost for our continuing topic of communication and calendar systems. She's just going to go more in depth and expand more on calendars and then how we use those calendars to facilitate and grow communication. There, like I said, no cost for the event. Hotel is to be determined, which is why we haven't advertised it yet. We're still waiting on finalizing bids. So this was wonderful. Thank you, Wisconsin Deafblind Project. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Heidi, Nancy, and interpreters. Yay!
Yay!
All right, everyone, we're done 2 minutes early. Nobody's ever complained about being done early. We'll see you guys in April.
Enjoy your evening.
We have Susan Bruce coming in April. More
that'll be
information
good.
to be shared soon.
The WDB TAP logo is displayed and reads WESP DHH, Wisconsin Deafblind Technical Assistance Project, WDB TAP.